Hello, this is Keith with Venia Coffee. We're going to take a look at E61 Brew Group maintenance today. Tools needed, we need two adjustable wrenches, a 12-inch and a 10-inch, something that will widen out to approximately 36 millimeters and 26 millimeters on the smaller side. I recommend taking some time and smoothing off the edges. I used a Dremel tool to smooth them out, so there's no sharp edges whatsoever. Very smooth, so you're not going to accidentally scrape or scratch your chrome. You'll need a slotted screwdriver, needle nose pliers, paper towels. That also, if you have a VBME machine, you will need a 5 millimeter hex wrench. And if it's a hot day, recommend pulling a shot and maybe an espresso tonic to get you through. Alright, so to start off, we just want to go ahead and remove the drip tray and set it aside out of the way. Go ahead and just turn your steam and hot water valves away so you have some space. Take out the portafilter, and on the brew lever we'll bring it up to the neutral position. In that position, you'll want to go ahead and just take this screw off. I recommend a paper towel or something for each section. You can lay the parts out so you don't get confused. So in there there'll be a star washer. You'll want to go ahead and make sure you keep track of that. That keeps it from coming undone. So we're going to replace the gaskets inside this section here, so you need a 22 on this outer nut. We'll just get it started. Then we'll take a 26. Came off easy. And let's back it out. Alright. So you notice this washer here it's in decent shape, but we're going to go ahead and replace that. Up here the cam looks really clean and nice. You want to check for scaling, other debris that's on there, any worn parts. And we'll go ahead and set this aside for now, and we'll come back to it. So next we'll move up to the top of the group, another 22 millimeter right here. It comes right off. And again, that washer is looking pretty worn, so we'll go ahead and replace that. Inside you'll see a lot of machines will have a screen here. It will protect the gigliere from getting clogged, and you'll want to give that a good clean. You see all the little sand on there and other debris, so give that a good cleaning before we reassemble. And let me see if I can get the other camera here, and we'll take a look down inside. Take a look in there. See the top of the gigliere that controls the flow rate of water going into the brew group. You want to check to make sure that that's not clogged. And for this application, we're not going to touch it. We're going to leave it in place. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and take off the top here. And this is 36 millimeter. Most machines will be 36. There are some that are not. You know, if you have a VBME machine, you'll have two hex nuts there that you'll want to back out to take the top off. This is spring loaded, so it may pop on you. There it goes. And that's this is the group that, or part that people call the mushroom, just because of kind of looks like a mushroom. This kind of acts, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but as a sacrificial metal in the group. So when you see corrosion, this is where it happens often first. So if you see a ton of corrosion here, it's a good sign that it may be happening elsewhere, but hopefully it happens here and not elsewhere in the machine. So down inside we have a spring. We'll pull out, and then the lever and gasket that control the brewing. So that spring sits on there. If you notice, your group has like a sticky point. It could be because this is incorrectly seated. It's popped out somehow. So just the act of taking it apart and putting it back together might fix your problem. Or you might see a lot of scale build up. There's very little on this machine here. Alright, so now we're down on the exhaust valve of the group here. We're gonna the very bottom there's a cap that just directs flow, and it's usually I like to keep them on just finger tight, so you could take them off and clean. You don't really need to torque them on there. And this other one is going to be 26 millimeter, I believe. And again, this has a spring pushing against it, so there is a bit of resistance on it. And just keep your hands under there to catch the spring and stuff when you take it apart, and it will probably pop when you get to there it goes, end of the thread. So looks nice and clean in there. Not too bad. Then lastly is right at the top. It's going to be a 36 millimeter. The last part, so it is full of water. So again, a spring, and this is another area where, if you notice the lever when you're actuating, it kind of catches. Could be the spring is out of place slightly, or is got a lot of grime build up on it, and just a toothbrush and some this backflush detergent will take off most of any debris on there for you. Here's the group disassembled. There's an old gasket on the bottom there that we will have to pop off with a hook. It is jammed up in there. And all the parts. So we have a gasket right here from the upper brew group. This gasket in here is what makes the seal, and when you lift the brew group, this part is pushed up by the cam and allows water to flow through. This gasket, you can see the indentation. Let's see if we can zoom in here. The indentation there, it is probably 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 years old, and hasn't been changed. So we're going to change that out. To do it, there's this square part is threaded on. Sometimes you can do it with fingers. You may need a wrench. There, I got it with a finger. And just keep track of all these little parts. And in there is a washer, and I actually do have a smaller screwdriver that's helpful in this case. And you can see it's just like the gasket's overtaking the washer, and alright, washer's off. And now the tricky part is getting this old gasket out of the carrier here. You just feel it's brittle. If you have a hook, like a dental hook, that's a great application use for it right now. I'm going to go find mine and pry that out. So I took a bit of prying, but got it out, and you want to see how brittle that is. It's just cracked. Time to be replaced. So if you find your group is leaking, it's likely that that's going to be the culprit, like leaking out of the brew head anyways. So we have a new gasket. This simply slides in place. That small washer. And screw it down. Just finger tighten that. So this is the part underneath the brew group that is the exhaust valve. Similar situation. We're gonna back that part off, and that one is not going to come off as easy. It's on there, so I'm going to have to find a wrench. Pieces on there. Whew. This one doesn't look quite as worn as the upper, but we're going to go ahead and replace it anyways. And there's a small brass washer that is in there. Pop that out. And then there's a hook or screwdriver to pry that out. New gasket in. Washer back on. I'm going to go ahead and add a little Dow 111 lubrication, just as that is a pretty snug fit, and I wanted to be able to get it off easy next time. A little Dow 111. That goes right back on. You just want to get that finger tight. Perfect. Then the very, very bottom valve, this little tiny guy, again we have another gasket in place that we're going to put a new one in, and the same procedure. So I won't show you it again, but just back it off, pull the washer off, put a new gasket in, and put it back together. Put a little Dow 111 on the threads so it comes apart easy next time. So next we're just going to pull off all the old gaskets, silicone gaskets, or Teflon, excuse me, gaskets, and replace them. So reassembly is as simple as putting it back on in reverse. Make sure that when you put the parts back together again, just give them a little test, make sure they're seated correctly, and put your new Teflon washers on. Part you gotta really push up while you twist. We're out of the Teflon gaskets on the bottom. They arrive tomorrow, so I'm just gonna put it back on for the sake of the video, to show you how. Then we'll take it off and replace it tomorrow, but push up firmly and twist. This might be the most difficult part of the reassembly. is getting that piece in. I did add a little bit of Dow 111 on the threads before off camera. It helps it go on smoothly. You don't need to over tighten. Just makes it difficult to take apart at a future date if you really cinch it on there. So I put the mushroom and other parts in some Duragol decalcifier. It works a lot faster than vinegar and does a pretty darn good job. About 15 minutes and it should be all cleaned up. So while we wait for the decalcifier to work, I'm going to go ahead and tackle the lever part. Inside there are 2 gaskets that we're going to replace and this Teflon washer. So we already loosened that while it was on the machine, so it's really easy to take out. There's another spring inside, and then this shaft will pull straight through the camshaft and it's off. And then the spacer, and then if you could see down in here, let's see if we can zoom in, there's 2 gaskets stacked up against each other, and we're going to go ahead and pull those out. If you have a hook, like a dental hook, it works good. Needle nose pliers, or if you don't, a thin slotted screwdriver will work as well. So we're going to put 2 replacement gaskets in there. We're going to cover them really well with Dow 111 lubricant. This is a common place for leaks, and if you notice any water dripping out of the lever group, it's likely because those 2 gaskets are getting dried out. So this is how you'll replace them. So here are 2 new gaskets, some Dow 111, and we're just going to go ahead and liberally give them a good coating. Just push them back in place, then reverse order to reassemble. Wipe the excess off my fingers. Shaft and the cam lever shaft, we're going to go ahead and add a fair amount of Dow 111 just right onto the shaft. So it goes in easy. You want to wipe off any excess. Next, that spring goes back over top, and then screw it together. And that the cam will move back and forth, and that's fine. It's designed to do that, so don't get worried putting it back together. We will finger tighten, and once we get it back on the machine, we're going to add a little torque down with it. Lastly, we're going to go ahead and remove this Teflon gasket and put a new one on. So we're going to reassemble here. You want the bulbous part of the cam to face the front of the machine when you stick it in, and you'll feel it just kind of pop in. Once it's in, go ahead and just finger tighten this in. It may take a couple turns to get the threads locked in. I've never seen one of these cross-threaded, but in theory it is possible to cross-thread, so be careful. There it goes. If you're facing a lot of resistance, don't force it. Here we're 26. You don't need to torque this down too tight. Those Teflon gaskets work pretty darn good at sealing it up. So we want it in the neutral position, so while we finish assembly. So you feel it's all the way down, just go and pop it up. It'll free play until we get the top part of the group back installed. So just in that free play position, you can take the handle off until we're done. And actually, while I think about it, I want to go ahead and torque up this outer nut, the 22 millimeter. Get not too tight. So the mushroom is back out of the descaler. It was in there for about 15 minutes. I did take a soft bristle brush and just gently remove any excess that's still on there, and then I dropped it in for another minute, and it looks pretty clean. We took off the O-ring on the bottom as it was flat. Put a new replacement piece on, pops right in. I believe that's a 20 millimeter O-ring if you ever need to replace it. Then on the top, need to put the screen back over the Gigliere. It should pop into place. Alright, so the Teflon gasket over the top. Just align it over the screen and finger tighten down. And we'll go ahead and, after we get it installed on the group, we'll give it a final torque. Okay, so the last bit, the spring goes over the top. This is a part where you want to make sure you get it in, and it shouldn't stand straight up and down. If not, it's not aligned properly. And again, if your group, once you finish, feels like it hangs up at some point, it might be because the spring isn't seated correctly on the top or bottom, is a common spot. And then the mushroom goes up over the top, push down, compress the spring, and then tighten. And I forgot the gasket, so we would be leaking up a storm. So there's gasket. There we go. That is the big 36. You want to tighten it just enough so you start crushing the Teflon washer, but not too far. So, and lastly, we will torque up or tighten down the top piece. And same scenario, you don't need to over tighten. Once we fire it up, if we see any leaks, then we can tighten down a little bit more to stop any of the leaks. Alright, so one last thing to do is to get that lever arm back on. Don't forget the star washer goes in there. And I like to put that in. It keeps everything in place. Since we know we're in the neutral position, just give it a little test, make sure it feels right. It's good and smooth. Looks like we did it right. One thing I've seen people do push too hard when tightening slotted screwdrivers and slipping off and marring the machine. I think having anything slotted on a machine of any kind is a bad idea. But I didn't design it. I'd love to see like a hex head screw there in its place, so you don't accidentally mar your machine. But there we go. We'll fire it up and test for leaks and see how it does. So we're going to test with a line basket in there, back flushing disc basket. Turn it on. And we're going to check for leaks out of anywhere. We are leaking out of the group gasket there. Haven't replaced it yet. It is hard and brittle, and in the next video we will show you how to replace that. But it works great. Want to check for leaks up here along those Teflon gaskets, and right here are the common places that a new install will leak from. But it looks good. We'll go ahead and let it get all the way up to temp and pull some shots and see how it does. But if you have any questions, feel free to email us or give us a call. We are here to help. All right, thanks so much. Bye bye.